Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. My name is Dan Bornay. I'm a deacon in the Diocese of Baton Rouge and the Communications Secretary for the Diocese. In your packets, you have 3 documents. One document is a news release. Embedded in that document is the message that Bishop Duca will deliver in just a moment. It is actually printed in that document. You also have a list of the clergy, and you have frequently asked questions. What we'd like to do is have the bishop come up, make his statement, and then we will entertain your questions. If you will, I would recognize you, and you would identify yourself and your media outlet, and then you could have the Q&A period, okay? Thank you very much. Bishop Duca.
Thank you for coming today. My opening remarks are really about trying to maybe put some context into this. The frequently asked questions answer a lot of the practical questions, but I'll, of course, be glad to answer any questions you have after these few remarks. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, today I have the sad and profoundly humbling task of publishing the names of all priests, and in our case, a bishop and 1 seminarian, against whom there are credible allegations of sexual abuse of minors and/or vulnerable adults in the Diocese of Baton Rouge. This list is based on the review of all 1,033 clergy personnel files of the Diocese of Baton Rouge from its formation in 1961 to the present. When I committed myself in the diocese to this task soon after my arrival, my first concern was, and has been, for the persons victimized by this abuse, who have often felt betrayed and unsupported by the Church. It has been my hope that this will be an important step that will help those men and women whose lives have been so deeply violated. I've also hoped that this will give a sense of the scope of the allegations in this diocese. My prayer is that this list will be a sign of a new level of transparency and openness in the way we respond to allegations of abuse and care for the victims. Some have asked why we must do this. As I said in my Sunday letter, the fact that this wound will not heal tells us that we must continue to bring everything into the light. This is not easy. I have listened to some victims share their stories, and there are no words to express the depth of sadness and shame that was experienced in our church, or that we should experience in our church, and that this is a part of our history. It's hard to lay this list out for all to see, but real renewal and healing cannot take place until we acknowledge the truths of the past. This list reflects the lives of real people and a path of pain and suffering that affects most deeply the persons who are victims of abuse, but also their friends and family that journey with them, and even innocent family members of the priest who are accused. Each name represents a unique case. Some only had one victim. Others' abuse gouged a wide path of pain in the lives of many victims. In some cases, the victims were male, and in others, female. But there is one thing most importantly, and that is, most importantly, that they all have in common, that they all have been credibly accused of sexual abuse of a minor or minors. I know that there may be some names that are a surprise and some revelations that will cause pain in extended families and friends. I deeply regret this. It is my hope that all those friends and family affected by this list will be treated with the respect they deserve. In the process of creating the list of names, I have heard from some, and even felt this myself in the beginning, that once this is done, we can move beyond the Christ mode and get back to normal. But I've come to see quite clearly that in this thinking there is already a return to an old standard to once again get this done and then sweep it under the carpet. This list is not the end, but an attempt to open the door on sexual abuse that none of us want to open. In every case of abuse on this list, I am sure that the victim was told, don't tell anyone. They heard this from their abuser, but also from the church, sometimes overtly. Okay, we'll take care of Father, you just keep this a secret. Or they felt an unspoken, institutionally expressed rule of the church that you are just not supposed to talk about these things. Unfortunately, to keep the status quo, the victims of abuse must bear the pain for others' peace of mind and must do this alone. My hope is that this list is a concrete sign that we do want to talk about this. Hopefully, a victim of abuse will see a name on this list and say, "That's me," and this will encourage them or give them the courage to go to a trusted friend, counselor, family member, or even if they want to come talk to me and share their story so they might no longer bear the pain alone. We must be willing to share their pain, admit our part in the tragedy, so that we can ease their burden and be, for the victims of sexual abuse, a support and not a barrier to the path of healing. So this list is not the final piece of dealing with this, but rather I see it as the beginning in a foundational change in the church's way of acting that will renew all the programs we have in place to protect our children with a focus on healing the victims of abuse rather than the protection of the status quo. I wanted to give that context because one of the things that I have experienced as I've gone through this is the reality that besides all, that I think we've thrown up a lot of programs, but I think what I'm realizing, and I think many bishops are realizing too, is that you can throw up a bunch of programs, but if you still keep the fundamental kind of attitude of trying to protect, of trying to keep hidden, even the most progressive programs can be turned to a wrong intention. So I'm really hoping that we begin to change the way we do things as a whole in the church, and one of that is to be more open and more vulnerable in dealing with those, especially who suffer from abuse, but hopefully in other areas as well. But those are my opening remarks. Oh, one last thing I wanted to say, and I didn't put it in this list. It's said in this frequently asked questions, but we do see this as a dynamic list. That is, we will continue to update it as new information comes in. We will continue to add names if they arise in the future or if new information comes forward.
There's 3 different lists, sort of. Could you explain what those are?
Oh, yeah, that's okay. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we were made a diocese in 1961. And so before that, we were the Diocese of New Orleans. And so what happens in the diocese is that when a diocese is formed, the priests that become part of that diocese, their files are all transferred over to that diocese. But if a man had worked in the area but did not transfer, his files were kept in Baton Rouge. So what you have is, first of all, the list of all the files that we have and information that comes from us for priests that have been in our diocese. The second group is the second one are those who have credible allegations that occurred within our territory before its creation in 1960. What I wanted to do, first of all, is make sure that any information we had about a priest that served in this area that shows up on any list comes on our list, okay? So the second group is those whose allegations occurred within the territory of Baton Rouge before its creation in 1961. Why that's important is that if someone has an accusation against a priest before we became a diocese, chances are that some of those files are in New Orleans. So the case goes to New Orleans, okay? What we're trying to do is get the most fullest presentation of anyone that worked in this area but may not be in this area, or who may have had a credible abuse case in some other diocese but worked here. So these are all just different kind of ways in which we're collecting data. The second group is the ones that came out of the Archdiocese of New Orleans report, and those priests that were named, even though they may not have had a credible accusation here in our diocese, they had one there because they worked in our diocese, then we listed them here as well. And the last one are those that have shown up on the Archdiocese of New Orleans, the Jesuit order list, and which is another list. Some of those Jesuits worked in our diocese as well.
So specific to the Baton Rouge Diocese is the first list?
Those are the ones that are priests of our diocese.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Identify yourself, please.
Yes, Harrison Golden, WBLA, Channel 33 here in Baton Rouge. The term credibly accused, if you could sort of break down what exactly that means.
Okay. A credible allegation for us, and I think it's listed in one of the, and I want to read this because it does help to say it pretty succinctly. A credible allegation is one which meets the foregoing definition, and the Bishop of the Diocese of Baton Rouge believes, with moral certitude, after careful investigation and consultation with professionals, that an incident of sexual abuse of a minor or vulnerable adult occurred or probably occurred, with the possibility that it did not occur being highly unlikely. Moral certitude, so that's what it is. So it's not the same determination of law. We may make a determination that may not hold up in court, but because of the information that we have, the context, sometimes there's one witness that comes forward, but then another comes forward, which again continues to add more credibility. So it's built on that investigation, and it becomes pretty clear sometimes the knowledge the person has that something really did happen. Sometimes down the line the priest actually admits, but that's the determination we use, and it's in the frequently asked questions. Yes.
Andrea Gallo with The Advocate. Bishop, did the diocese reach out to the priests and the victims during this process if you knew you were going to be naming these priests?
We did not reach out to the victims. We had some victims called to be sure that the name was on the list, but we did not reach out to the victims.
What about the priests?
The priests that are on the list were made, well, the priest or the former priest mainly, were let know that their name would be on the list.
And some of the dates of the reports being made against these priests were in 2018 or pretty recent. So during this process, did you have new allegations coming forward, new victims coming forward?
Well, I have two other announcements to make at the end of this, but and it'll give some answer to that question. But we did have people coming forward. Many of them, some came forward to tell stories about people we already knew about. But there was one on the list, I think, that was relatively recent. It's a historic case, but we just found out about it recently. Yes?
There's been sort of a dip in people coming to the Catholic Church. Do you think releasing these names is going to help that or hinder that, make it worse?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't think about that, actually. That's not the reason I'm doing it, but I don't know. I'm hoping that, and believe me, every step we do, we're trying our best to do this in a respectful way, but also a way that's genuine. I'm trying to be genuine about this, and I just have to let that speak for itself. I think if the reason people have not come back to the church is because they feel they can't be trusted, that we're trying to hide things, that we're acting in a clandestine way that's detrimental to people, I hope this is one step that might help clear some of that up. That's something I think people, you have to earn trust, and I think hopefully this is a step. And so I'm hoping it has a positive effect. And there are many different reasons why people have stopped coming to church, but I know this is a major one for some people. Yes.
Gabby Smith with Catholic Radio New Orleans. What are the seminaries doing in order to prevent this in the future? You were talking about programs, but programs, you were saying that happens, and you guys have been doing that over and over.
Well, I mean, we have a tremendous amount of programs now, and the way we handle cases is so different now since we've put into the programs of safe environment and protecting God's children. And those are the programs I'm talking about that have to do with the way we gather information. Usually information would come in to usually one of the priests, vicar general, or the bishop, and the decision about what happened to that priest was decided by those people. Now when a person calls in with an allegation, it goes to our victims coordinator, assistance coordinator, who then hands it on to a group of lay people, our independent review board, so I get some independent review board, who reviews it, and then they come to the bishop and tell the bishop, we believe this is a credible allegation. and this is, we believe, is your next action. And then what happens once it's that, then the priest is removed. There's very concrete programs like that. But they all have to, any program has to be inspired with a fundamental change of attitude as well. And you have to be willing to embrace that program fully, because it leads you down roads that you don't want to go. It leads you down roads that people don't want to see. They're not used to that. For example, I had this in my experience in Dallas. A priest was credibly accused. So I was sent to the parish one Sunday, which we do here, and I haven't done it, but we would do it if this was the case. He was a sitting pastor when it happened, and stand up in front of the people and say, Father so-and-so has been removed because of a credible accusation of sexual abuse against minors. Okay? If you have any knowledge of this, or you'd like to come forward for yourself, please do so. And the people were angry. They liked that pastor, but that had to be said out loud. And so those are things people are not used to hearing, and they'd rather not hear it sometimes. But if we're going to have an open discussion about this and really begin to address the issue, then you have to be honest about that, because otherwise the priest may still have access to homes, may still have access. They think he's just going off for medical care or something. And so if the priest is absolved, then he can come back to ministry, because there's further investigation that goes on. But so those are the kind of programs I'm talking about. Seminaries are continually trying to review their programs, especially now, to make sure that they add programs and education and experiences that help develop a person's sexual maturity. Also look for telltale signs of that might, show they're not mature enough for priestly ministry. For example, Notre Dame, what Notre Dame has done is they have partnered with a parish, local parish. So a lot of the experience the students are having is in actual parish life with other people in the parishes, men and women, who also kind of participate in their evaluation. And I know from firsthand that, talking to a lot of women, that women pick up things differently than men do, and sometimes they can be a good test and evaluator. But that's a little bit of your answer to your question. But believe me, all seminaries right now are reviewing their practices and their formation programs.
And is there anything being done for the victims if they do call in? What are the diocese doing for them?
We offer them immediately. They can come in and talk to our assistance coordinator herself, Amy Cordon, and but also we offer them counseling, a counselor they can choose, or we can offer them some suggestions. But also we journey with them. So for example, when I got here in August, and all this things was stirring up, Amy came and talked to me and explained to me what she does, and then said, I'm getting a lot of calls right now, because every time this becomes part of the public debate, it stirs up all these feelings again. And so they were calling in to say, look, I'm getting all out of whack again. Can you give me some counsel? And we journey with them. We don't just give them 3 months of counseling or 2 months of counseling and say, okay, we're done now. We journey with them if they wish us to journey with them, to help them in that way. And so they have a contact person. If they start kind of losing it, they know they can come back to someone that understands their case and understands what's going on. So that's what we do for the victims, and we try our best to give them the care that they need to help through this, because oftentimes it's a lifetime of healing, if you ever really fully heal from it at all.
Bishop, I'm curious what Matt Houston with WAFB, what damage has this done to the church?
Well, I think a lot of damage to our credibility, a damage to the institution of the priesthood, just across the board. I think it's damaged some of the moral strength of the church's teaching. But I think it can be recovered if we can, in a sense, recover kind of our grounding in this. I think what's happened is that we got into the mode from the very beginning of throwing up a wall of protection, and we really need to look at being more vulnerable and more attentive to the pain of the victim. Now, I'll get real personal with you. When I was in Dallas, we dealt with a very serious case of child abuse. And I remember some of the initial conversations about this priest, and everyone was concerned about the priest and finding out what was going on with the priest. And I remember those concerns. But I have to tell you, when I go back and look over where did the diocese make the biggest mistake, I realize it's because we never stop to consider the pain of the victims. We were always focused on the priest. We either I don't know if we thought, oh, they'll get over it, or it's not that big a deal. If you've not been a victim of abuse, then you minimize it. I think we minimize it because it's too painful to look at. Even when priests were doing horrific things, some people say, oh, I can't believe that. I just can't believe that. We don't want to believe it. It's too hard. And I'm sure the same dynamics work in families as well. But we don't want to look at it because if you open that up, it causes a lot of pain, a lot of it breaks the status quo. It breaks the harmony that everybody wants to have in a family, and even we want to have in the church. And so I think that we lost a lot of credibility because we drew up the walls. And I think that we're trying to find a place now where we can maybe model something that might actually be helpful to people in dealing with this even in their own families. But you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to kind of let down the walls. And I hope this list is a way of doing that. It's a hard thing, this list. It affects a lot of people's lives, but it's our way of trying to be open about this.
In practice, how do you do that? How do you let down the walls?
What you do this, and the way you receive people when they come forward through allegations. You don't accuse them. You bring them in. You immediately give them the counseling they need, and you journey with them. You act swiftly when you see something that's present. For example, a priest or a situation that demands attention. It's done swiftly. Person's taken out. The people of the parish are told what's happening, so they can protect their children. They can go ask their children, did anything happen? That's one of the biggest complaints. They say, well, how come you didn't tell us? Maybe our children were involved in this, and we had no way of even protecting our children. So those are the kind of ways in which we get out. And yes, and there's a lot of criticism that comes from that. There's a lot of, but at the same time, that's the way you have to do. That's the way we do things, and that's hopefully one of the ways you begin to build a new environment of trust.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for this investigation? You had just gotten here.
Well, I think I wrote an article in the Commentator, but I think it was that two things happened. One was the Illinois. What was it? How do they term that? The Illinois grand jury review of abuse in the Diocese of Illinois. It's a document that has some criticism, but what's true and not controvertible is that they gave concrete descriptions of what sexual abuse of a minor is like. Okay, we've always talked about it, but no one's put a face on it. They put a face on it, and that opened people's eyes again. And at the same time, we had the Cardinal McCarrick scandal. That here was someone who was known to be an abuser, but still was walking around at high levels of church life. Those two things together just said, wait a minute, this is not working. And there was a call, first of all, to greater accountability of bishops and a greater accountability of the church. And they said, if this is happening, what else is happening? And so there was a call, I think, that one of the things that we need to do is, because there was always this discussion about what are the dioceses hiding in their secret files, okay? Well, in our case, in our diocese, we have personnel files, but when an allegation comes in against a priest, we create another file that goes into a confidential file. Confidential because that file now will begin to contain the names of other names. Victims, for example, people involved that demand another level of confidentiality. And so those are what we call our secret files. They're just another set of files that have a higher level of confidentiality, and they're managed pretty much by our victims assistant coordinator. And so, so those things are, I think that was a catalyst for it, and I think that everyone is finding that this is a first step, a way to kind of begin to build some credibility again, and to kind of also do away with some of the myths about what's going on behind the scenes, and also to acknowledge some things that generally went on that need to be changed, and we need to accept the responsibility for. Yes, sir?
Andrew, and then in the back. Andrew, then in the back.
Okay.
Looking at the dates, the timeframes of a lot of this abuse, it seems like the majority of it was happening in the 70s, particularly under Bishop Sullivan. Is there any thought to why it was so prevalent then in Sullivan's leadership during that time?
You know, I don't know how, this is a larger sociological question that I really don't know, that may have to do with seminary formation back then. I don't know. Obviously, we know that Bishop Sullivan's on this list. And, you know, to be honest, when you have a certain view of the world, you're going to see things differently. I used to say in the seminary, if the seminary faculty is sane, then crazy looks crazy. But if the seminary faculty is crazy, then crazy looks normal. Okay? And so I think that says something what happens. But also, it was not just him. It was sociologically, it was a time when much of this was happening in many dioceses. So it's hard to know why that is the case. But there's an old report, the John Jay report that came out, that was commissioned by the bishops early on, that did a big, deep research into this, and maybe a source of some answers there. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Brendan Tomini. I'm a survivor of the actual abuse. That took
gosh.
place. And I wanted to ask some questions. I was told today that a list of names is going to be read. Are you reading the list of names, or are you just handing out a list of names?
We're handing out the list of names to be published by anyone. It will be on our website. It'll be.
That's stated on
Was somewhat. I don't mind reading them out if you think people will play the whole thing. I can read them out. We don't want planning to read them out. We just want to disseminate them as fully as we can throughout the diocese.
Okay, so I have, like I said, I was actual survivor of the helped in several situations. The main problem that people have is the hiding and the, starting over again, and just it'll go away and it'll hide, it'll hide, it'll hide. That's the issue that the public has. And last week you were quoted as in the advocate as stating the majority of people just wish this would go away and we get past it. I don't think that's what the majority of people want, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think they want to know it's not happening right now under their noses again today, the same way it happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Instead, your statement was people get over it and just sweep it past. But why don't, in the 50s, when y'all started buying insurance policies to combat the future idea that you're going to be having sexual abuse issues, why not make that statement in the 60s and stop hiding it? Why not, stop the issues going on instead of a continuing role? It's not like this is a short-term problem.
Right.
It's decade after decade. And lastly, I don't want to end on a sour note. Y'all have done a lot for me personally. I know y'all helped other survivors. I appreciate it. But, thanks for taking my question.
Well, first of all, it's hard for me to answer for the past, but I can tell you that there was, and I try to say that there was a culture that was always trying to protect, and somehow never allowed the voice of the victims to come forward, and never allowed the church to. They were scared to even reach out to anyone, lest they have to, I guess, pay lots of money. Okay, to be real honest, and so it was a closing down of things, and what I'm trying to do here is trying to say that I don't want this to stop. I mean, the people that I should have said it this way. A lot of people that complain to me say, I wish this would just go away, okay? Because, and I always tell them, it won't go away. And the only way the honest thing is this. Right now, I can honestly say I am not aware of any hint or possibility that this is going on in our diocese right now, okay? I have no hint, no little weird feeling that this is happening, okay? And no one has come to me with any kind of recent complaints, okay? But I also tell you that part of our program, in the best sense of the word, is that this has got to be a church. The church has to have their eyes open all the time, okay? And I'll give you an example. When I was in Dallas, there was a priest that told me this story. He was preparing for Saturday night, Holy Saturday Mass, okay? He was a couple servers short. Some guy walked into the sacristy and said, "Oh, Father, I see that you're having some problem here. Can I help you?" He said, "Yes." "You know how to use a censer?" "Yes." "Well, why don't you work with those two guys over there and you be the censer?" He said, "Okay." So he served the whole Mass, okay? After Mass, one of the parishioners came up. He said, "Father, I think that guy was at another place, and I think the pastor kicked him out of the parish for some reason," okay? And turned to find out, yes, there was a big problem there. And this guy was beginning the process, as you know, to get into the system and begin to groom and make himself a part of the system, okay? But it's got to be a work with everybody's got to have their eyes open, you know, to be aware of this problem, to be aware that there are predators out there that are looking, and to name them, even if it is the priest, even if it is someone in authority in their church, okay? So that's how we, in a sense, provide a safe environment. But I'll tell you, sometimes people are resistant to that, and I keep pushing it. All of our volunteers have to go through some simple basic training about how to spot this, how to help people, how to identify it. And we try to incorporate all that into our schools. There is a, you know, when I go to a school now, I haven't gone to many yet, when I was in Shreveport, I'd always come up, I wouldn't tell them what time I'm coming, and I'd go up and say, make sure the doors were locked, that I couldn't get in. You know, "Oh, Bishop, we're sorry." No, I'm glad I couldn't get in, because that's the way it's supposed to be. So that's my hope is that we can build into an environment of protection, an environment of awareness that is, first of all, keeps it from happening, but when it does happen, that we act decisively and caringly. And that's all I can promise to try to do.
The list of names needs to be read, though.
Okay. I'll be glad to read it here. If someone.
I'm asking today, like today or at church.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody's going to read it.
I could do that maybe. Okay. I'll think about that. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions, Jessica?
Have you, or do you plan on submitting this list to the DA? Have you been in?
Oh yeah. In fact, I think all the letters have gone out already. Every case has been reported. Probably another time, but we've done it all again for historical cases, anything.
Have they expressed any interest in pursuing charges?
They're looking into them. Some of them are just the age is long. The priests are deceased, but they're looking into every case. In fact, I saw the DA the other night, and he said we're reviewing all the cases, finding who's dead, who's alive. And I have two more announcements real quick before we leave. But yes.
Really quick. People that are watching this that might come to church on Sunday, what do you have to say to them?
I have to say to them what I said last week. You know, the letter I sent last really said it all. That this is the process that we're doing to help build trust, but also to help, hopefully, provide a platform that people see that we want to talk about this, and we want victims who have not come forward to come forward. I mean, I have some sad stories. One of an older man that, you know, just wanted to tell someone. This happened when he was very young. He'd been carrying it all his life. He'd kind of dealt with it, but once we started this, we've had several people come and just tell their stories of priests we already knew were abusers, but to tell their stories. And I've sat and listened to some, I can't believe it. You know, it's hard to listen to, but yet I want to share that pain with them, and it's difficult. Now, let me give you two concrete examples of some of the effect of this. Give me, I need one. Since we started, we've had two situations arise that demand some attention. And so these two announcements will be read this Sunday at these particular churches. And I'm pretty sure it's this Sunday. It'll depend on if they have any that's going to keep them doing it. But anyway, to be read at St. Aloysius Parish at all Sunday Masses. As your bishop, with deep sadness, I must inform you that the Diocesan Victim Assistance Office has recently received credible allegations that in the mid-1960s, some altar boys were sexually abused by a volunteer worker at St. Aloysius Parish. The names of the accused is Everett Gautier, Senior, deceased. If you know of such instances or were a victim of such abuse, please contact Amy Cordon, Victim Assistance Coordinator on the Dawson 24-hour sexual abuse hotline at that number, 225-242-0250. The Diocese of Baton Rouge is prepared to offer immediate outreach and compassionate assistance. On that, we've had several credible allegations already. And so this is this came forward, I think, because someone felt, hopefully it felt encouraged to come forward. Then we have this one, which is, normally what would happen is that I would not have a press conference for this. Normally what would happen is this would happen automatically within our own investigation. These both have been reported immediately to law enforcement. If they had started an investigation, we would have backed off. But since this is a deceased, and we would continue on with our process. And to St. Thomas More, as your bishop, with deep sadness, I must inform you that an allegation of sexual abuse has been made against a member of the clergy serving St. Thomas More Parish during the early mid to mid-1970s. The victim is uncertain of the identity of the perpetrator. This allegation is being taken seriously and is being investigated. Anyone having information regarding sexual abuse of a minor by a member of the clergy during the early to mid-1970s or any time should call Amy Cordon, Victim Assistance Coordinator on the Dawson 24-hour sexual abuse hotline at 225-242-0250. Oftentimes, when we get an allegation, a person is not able to remember everything completely. But there was enough information in the story to connect it with the parish and things that went on at the parish at that time. The obvious people we knew that were there, they were shown pictures, they were to know it's not that person, not that person. So we've exhausted all of our opportunities, and so we're just trying to see if we can find out. Maybe there was someone else there that had that same experience, and we might help them come forward, and they may provide more information. So this is the way our process normally works, but I think this is a direct result of us speaking more openly and honestly about this. There's more to do. I'm not saying that we're finished on this, and I pray God that I can hold to the task, and I welcome any criticism that comes from someone who, in fact, I need to know from those who most need our help and understand this most deeply, and I appreciate you being here today. Thank you for being here. And
with these new allegations that just came in, when those sorts of things happen in the future, maybe this list is released and people come forward with more, will the diocese continue to publish or make public the fact that these allegations have been made?
yes, they're normally made in the diocese anyway through the parishes, but because they're going on this list in a more public way, we'll have to find a way to do that so that we don't like slip something in and everybody go, oh wait, they added a list, I didn't know that. Okay, we'll find a way that we can communicate this clearly, because we want to communicate it clearly, because if someone is proven to be a perpetrator, then we want their name out there so people can say, wait a minute, that happened to me too, you know? Because some people will have little things happen to them and they'll brush it off as not a big thing. But put into another context, they said, oh wait, that's why I felt so bad about that, you know? And it can help us assure them that they are not the problem.